once again. This is me, Leonard, broadcasting as usual from HASLINGDEN, 30 miles or 50 kilometres roughly, north of Manchester in the UK, on Monday the 7th of November 2011. This is part 47 of my series, The United States of Europe. And we're looking today at the UK. We've been through all the 27 countries in the EU so far, and we've briefly mentioned all the other countries which are either not in or not completely in the EU, which don't use the euro or do use the euro. So we've got a hodgepodge, a patched quilt if you like, of people singing from different hymn sheets. Now, the UK is in the EU. It's not in the euro. It's a member of NATO. But it's not in Schengen either. So it's stayed on the outside. Now, initially, back in the 50s, when the French and the Germans were talking about an Iron Steel Confederation, which would prevent Germany getting and using iron and steel to convert into war equipment and war machinery, the British sent a representative. I think I can get probably a top civil servant, and he sort of rather poo-pooed the whole thing and thought it was a joke and left early. Now, some 10 years later, we're begging to be let in. And of course, initially, de Gaulle wouldn't let us in. He thought we were too closely connected to the United States, and to some extent we are. Somehow we like to think of ourselves as, I don't know, we had the biggest empire the world has ever seen. And it seems that anybody who gets in Downing Street can't seem to get over that fact and appreciate that we're only a tiny little island again, minuscule compared to France and Spain. They talk about punching above our weight and going to wars like Iraq and Afghanistan. We've got troops in Germany and in Cyprus and in the Falkland Islands. What the hell are we doing with troops in Germany? They tell us we can't have this and we can't have that. We've got to have austerity and cuts. And yet we can spend 500 million or more bombing Libya. And now it looks to me as though we wasted a lot of money and caused a lot of confusion and problems there. Well, we'll see. Well, we won't properly join the club. This is the problem. They want to be in the golf club and they want to be allowed to play with everybody else, but with a different size ball. We wouldn't join Schengen because we said, oh no, we don't want terrorists coming here. As if the whole of Europe was full of them. Well, as we've seen, we didn't have to keep them out, they were already here. As the July the 7th bombers showed us. And at the time when we used that excuse, the only terrorists were from Northern Ireland. And we didn't even have a passport control with Northern Ireland. So it was a lame excuse. And now, of course, they're dancing in the streets in Westminster that we didn't join the euro. Well, 7 days a week is a long time in politics. And if ever the pound gets in trouble, the Conservatives will soon change their minds if it suits them. They're very short-term minded, the Conservatives. I mean, Mr. Cameron is always boasting that 1940 was our finest hour, but he never mentions that the Tories, Conservatives, were in office when Hitler was appeased, and when we could have stopped him when he walked into the Rhineland with our navy and the French army. We could have stopped him. and he might have been deposed if he hadn't got his way at that point. So Mr. Cameron doesn't mention that. And the Conservatives wrecked our railways, and Mrs. Thatcher got us in trouble in the Falklands. And we damn near lost that war. It was only because a few of the bombs dropped on our ships didn't go off. The fuses had a problem. Otherwise, we would have lost it. So she gambled everything, cost 1,000 lives for a little rock down near the Antarctic, and it's cost us billions, absolute billions. And yet she insisted on taking the march past as the troops came home, wouldn't let the Queen near it. Of course, then she brought in the poll tax, which destroyed her in the end. She didn't like poor people, and the poll tax was meant to let the rich off paying their fair share and to make the poor suffer even more. And life has a way of getting back at you when you act like that. And it did, and she was thrown out of Downing Street in tears. Now, at the moment, we've got difficulties in Europe. We're in difficulties, and we're worried, because if the Eurozone blows apart, which it won't, I can assure you, they're afraid we'll be affected by this. And of course these Eurosceptics, these little Englanders in the Conservative Party, these short-term minded folk, they're all millionaires, most of them, in the cabinet. They think Britain's isolated. They think we can be stand apart, stand aside, because we had an empire at one time for some reason. We think that we're different. Well, at one time I hear, or at least I read, that Wilson was thinking of asking the United States to let us be the 51st state or something. Anyway, that's what I read somewhere. So, my dream is a United States of Europe. My dream is that one day we will all vote for a president of the United States of Europe. What a job that will be. Already, and you never hear this from the Eurosceptics, the GDP of the 27 countries in the EU is greater, almost greater, than the United States and China combined. So we're streets ahead of China already. If we can get all these other countries in, this is the greatest power on earth. Militarily, maybe the United States is still a long way ahead. But nevertheless, I think Europe will lead the world in the 21st century and onwards, because I believe we're going to have 2,000 years of peace if we can just stitch this together. When the United States of America was being formed, the founding fathers didn't want a single currency. Well, can you imagine 51 states of America with different currencies? How could you make a car and sell it in 51 different states with 51 different currencies? This is the whole point of the single currency. So that whatever you produce, you can sell anywhere in this incredibly huge market for the same price. And you don't have to pay commission to banks when you're changing your money. And equally, the Schengen Agreement allows people to travel without passports, although most of them have an ID card. I mean, my Romanian girlfriend, she can come into the UK with just her ID card, as long as it's up to date. I can't. I had an ID card, which the Labour government brought in. I spent £30 on it. Mrs. May, the Conservative Home Secretary, danced a jig in Parliament when she gleefully announced that not only was it no longer effective, no longer usable, but that they wouldn't give me my money back. So millionaires were telling pensioners like me that they were stealing their £30 that they'd paid in good faith for that. Can you imagine what would happen if any other company did that? Or if you tried to take £30 from the government? Well, might is right. And one day soon, people will begin to understand about the Conservatives and their short-termism. I mean, for example, this crazy idea of building a high-speed railway spending 30 billion, when some of our railways are worse than some of the railways in Romania. I mean, a lot of the trains in the north are ancient diesel rail cars. And I've been in some of them, and there are more fumes inside than outside. With that 30 billion, we could have overhead power lines everywhere. We could raise the bridges so that we could have double-decker trains. We needn't bother lengthening trains and stations with double-decker trains. We could carry nearly 60% more passengers on the same trains if they were double-decker. But we can't have double-deckers because our bridges are too low. They can on the continent because they have a bigger loading gauge, as it's called. The track's the same width, but the trains themselves are wider and higher. Now, if we could raise all the bridges, not only could we have double-decker trains, but we could have the biggest containers on the freight trains. At the moment we can't, we can only have the smaller ones. So the Conservatives are spending 30 billion on this high-speed line. None of us will be able to afford to use it. With the system of franchised train companies, whoever gets the franchise to run that service, they'll be charging 500 quid, even at today's prices, to travel from London to Birmingham. And it's going to be 2025 or some ridiculous time before we can use it. Well, that 30 billion could modernise our railways. We've got 2.5 million people out of work. Imagine if we spent 30 billion on our railways and we could start tomorrow. We could put a heck of a lot of people to work. And then we would have a decent system of trains in this country. We don't need a high-speed train because we've got high-speed trains to London, and then we've got fairly fast services, and we could have even faster services if we could improve the track and improve the trains. I mean, I travel from London to Manchester on Virgin Pedalinos, and they're doing 125 up to 135 in places. Now, that's fast enough for me. It only just takes 2 hours and a few minutes to get to Manchester. What's the point of trying to get there in 30 minutes less than spending 30 billion to do it? It's just simply because the rest of Europe has got high-speed trains and we don't. But we can run them from London. Wait, let's do one thing at a time. The Conservatives are the ones who wrecked our railways. I mean, Dr. Beeching got rid of a third of our railways, and now we would give our IT to be able to get them back. Mrs. Thatcher destroyed the coal mines, because not only have we got 100 years of coal underground, but we used to make our own gas. Do you remember? Our own town gas. Now we're paying through the nose for imported gas. And I think it's a bit risky to have shiploads of highly explosive liquid gas on a tanker in the present climate of, with all this terrorism business about. So my view is that we should stop pussyfooting around on the edge like a delicate damsel on a honeymoon night, afraid to come out of the bathroom, and get stuck in. And I believe that if we had been in with our financial expertise and our long history of learning how to deal with things, we might have prevented the present situation. But we won't solve the euro problem by sticking plaster fixes or knee-jerk reactions. We need a United States of Europe, and we need to be part of that. So that's it for the moment. That's my dream. In about a week's time, or less, the website, the United States of Europe, www.useurope.eu will be online, and there you will find a link to all my videos, so you can just look at any country and link straight to my video. And there will also be links to other sources of information about the EU, and links to other websites which advocate, as I do, the unification of the states of Europe. I mean, if you think of the United States, would it have been such a great country if all those states had stayed separate? I don't think so, with 50 odd different currencies. That's a joke. So think how strong we would become. Unbelievable. Because we're not all separate little countries, and we're not separate nations. We're one human race. And it's only when we think like that and stop thinking of our individuality that we've got a hope of improving things. And what a dream we can give our children. 2,000 years of peace with free movement of labour and goods. Well, that's it. God bless, while it's still legal in the UK to say God bless. Take care and bye for now.